Hello, welcome to another episode of Soul Sessions with CreativeMind. I'm Debra Maldonado.
I'm Dr. Rob.
And we're here to bring you another episode on our series on personality, talking about the big five and talking about the Jungian model, Jungian coaching when it comes to the big five personality traits. Yeah. And do you have the personality to be a coach, and what makes an effective coach? So we talked about openness is number one. We talked about conscientiousness. And last week we talked about extroversion. So if you missed any of those episodes, definitely go back and listen. But today we're on number 4 of the 5, and it is agreeableness. And really what we're talking about is, can you balance being an empathetic coach, but also keep strong boundaries and not get taken advantage of?
That's right.
Biggest question. And before we begin, please, I want to remind you to subscribe to our podcast on Spotify, iTunes, all those podcast services, or if you're watching us on YouTube, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and make sure you don't miss any episode. All right. You can go ahead. I did my little commercial.
All right. So what does agreeableness have to do with coaching?
Yes.
So agreeableness helps a coach build rapport and trust with clients, creating a foundation for meaningful work. So it's really necessary. We're not saying we don't need agreeableness.
Isn't it like you get along with people, basically?
Yeah, we're friendly, we're open, we're kind of nice to talk to. In other words, we're not contrary, we're not picking up fight, we're not,
negative all the time,
debating everything.
Yeah.
It's a smooth connection, right, that we're building. On the other side of that, what is the negative side of agreeableness?
That we become overly agreeable and the pleaser, which I think really, I see this a lot with women, men too, but predominantly women in all areas. I think it's just how we are raised culturally, is to make sure everyone's happy, not make waves, not cause fights, not cause conflicts. So you smooth things over. Again, there's exceptions to every rule, but predominantly women have a hard time because they're so empathetic and so kind and so caring about the clients. And again, not saying men are not, but it gets in their way of them keeping boundaries, setting rules, challenging the client, or having difficult conversations because they don't want that conflict.
Yeah. So
they'll end up, it'll end up impacting not only, the way they run their business, their team members, but also how they conduct their coaching session and how they run like their coaching agreement with their clients.
That's right. And coaching is all about holding people accountable and helping them move through difficult situations. So you have to be able to call your clients out and say, what's going on here, right? And have difficult conversations that often even might lead into confrontational situations, not in a violent way or aggressive way, right? But that's what they're paying you for.
Almost like assertive, a little bit assertive.
You have to be assertive, and you have to go into uncomfortable situations.
And so some of the things we've noticed with, especially new coaches, they tend to use soothing, like almost like therapy. And especially a lot of people who've been in therapy, they think that's what coaching is. It's like, oh, and everything's going to work out. And I was like that when I first started. I worked with a lot of single women that were very upset they weren't meeting someone. So it was always this soothing, believe everything's going to work out. And then I started, doing my individuation work. And it was interesting when I started holding them accountable, when I started asking difficult questions, all of a sudden it felt really empowering and then I saw that they were actually doing better than actually when I was just telling them everything's going to work out and just believe everything's going to work out and have faith and visualize, here's another meditation for you. And you end up being this, kind of something your girlfriend would do versus a real coach that says, well, let's look at this pattern here. Why do you keep doing the same thing? And what do you think that is about you? And that can be confrontational. And that's really great coaching.
That is great coaching. And it's not about giving advice and having all the answers like a lot of people think that, we're listening to the client's problems and then we're giving them advice. That's not coaching. Coaching is about helping the client find their answers for themselves. And it's a collaboration, right? We're collaborating. Two minds are better than one. We're teaming up with our clients to help them find the answers for themselves.
So they could talk to their friends about and hear the advice and cheerleading from their friends. A coach is there. Their
grandmother.
Yeah, or their mother or their grandmother. The coach is there to hold them to the fire where they're really going to have change in their life.
Yeah.
And so I want you, this idea of over-identifying with the clients, when the coach over-identifies with the client, what does that mean? Because I find that very intriguing statement.
Yeah, I remember when I first started doing therapy, it was like I was so empathetic with the client situation that I took it up myself. I kind of felt what they were feeling, and I would take it home with me and kind of continue to identify with their situation and their circumstances.
Like make it a part, like their problem becomes your problem?
Their problem becomes your problem, exactly. That's over-identifying with your clients.
And I remember that too. And this actually comes through this idea of what we teach to our coaches about non-attachment, is that when your ego is attached, again, getting the ego out of the way, like we talked about last episode, in the coaching experience, is that if your ego's in the way, you're going to celebrate when your client has success, and then you're going to feel like a failure when they don't. And almost like I felt like I was riding the wave with them. If they came on the call and they were like, oh, thank you, this is so great, and I'm getting all these dates now, and everything feels great, and I met this guy, I would feel good. I'm doing my work. And then it didn't work out, and then I'd feel bad. And I'm like, I can't go on this roller coaster anymore. And when I started to approach when the client was having difficulty, instead of thinking it's good that when things are good and bad when things are bad, I started using those difficulties as an opportunity to coach them. Then it started getting interesting. Then it started me asking them, well, what's the opportunity here? Versus let me soothe you and make you feel better. So until the next session, it's like, there's something here. Like, this is where the work is. It's not when the client is celebrating. And another thing that we encourage people to do is not have a session with clients every week. When you have a session with a client every week, they tend to not have that resistance show up. They tend to kind of ride the high. And then at the end of if you do 12-week program with them every week, you have a session, there's no space for them to have the resistance, and none of the work really gets done. It's just you're cheerleading them to the next step. It's when they have that space in between sessions and there's that gap of your support a little bit, and they're kind of on their own out into the world, dealing in the wild with their mind. They start to have like resistance, and then that's really they bring to the next session to work with. That's really powerful.
That's right.
And so like overly identifying with their successes and beating yourself up when they're in failure, I find that was the reason why many times I couldn't raise my rates. When I felt guilty if they spent a lot of money and they didn't get a success, I felt like then I was afraid to even bring a client on, because I thought, well, what if they can't get the results? And then, what does that mean about me? And so the client can be, like you said, the coach can be over-identified with the client and their goals. And the client is responsible for their results. The coach is not. The coach is responsible for delivering this coaching. The coach is responsible for showing up, to be well-trained, to understand psychology, to understand where to take the client psychologically, but they're not responsible for the client actually doing the work, showing up, working with their mind, and doing the work outside of the coaching session. And we have to realize as coaches that we can't carry that burden, or you're never going to take on clients.
That's right. It becomes too difficult.
Yeah. And it's stressful. Like, why you have enough problems in your life. You're taking on also the successes of your clients as well. Like, wow, I'm so great because my clients have this great success. You're not that great. Your client is amazing, right? And giving that success to them, not owning it for yourself.
At this point, really understanding transference and countertransference is really important. So transference is what the client is going to project onto you, and what do you do with that, right? You have to be conscious enough to understand, okay, when the client is projecting onto me as a coach, what do I do with that? Well, one of the things that we can do is kind of put it on the table and say, at a certain point, right, when we feel like the client is ready to hear this, let's bring it up and talk about it, so that it becomes now content for the benefit of the client. We never do it to put them down or to shame them or anything like that. It's so that they can benefit from understanding how are they showing up in other relationships, because whatever they're transferring onto you, meaning they're projecting onto you, you can pretty much be sure they're doing it somewhere out there also in their public relationships.
So if the client is shut down or like kind of picky with you about your coaching and critical, we don't get that very often, but there could be someone who just has a bad attitude. You know they're having that attitude with other people, and then they're asking you, and they're telling you, why don't I have friends, or why can't I find a relationship, or why do I have trouble with my boss? You already know, like, this is what I'm picking up too, right?
Yes. Often it reflects their relationship with their parents.
Yeah, and
right?
you become like their projection.
Their mother or their father, or both sometimes. And you know that what they're doing is they're projecting those expectations onto you as a coach.
You need to take care of me. You need to save me. Right. You need to rescue me, type of thing.
Yeah. So it becomes really useful information if you can recognize it, to help them understand that part of their own psychology, and then help them move past it, right? Integrate it, in other words, come to terms with it, and then move past that.
Well, wouldn't countertransference be when the coach agrees with the client that they're there to rescue them? That's where that kind of we talked about taking. If the client's projecting, you're my hero, and then the client's like, I am your hero. I'm going to help you. I'm going to save you. Would that be countertransference?
Yeah, and the coach is saying that.
Yeah, the coach is saying, yeah, I am your hero. I have all the answers, and I'm going to save you.
Yeah, that would be an example of countertransference. That's right. And that the main thing would be that the coach in that situation is unaware of what they're doing, right? They're kind of falling into that trap. Yeah,
they're not like consciously saying I am, but there's this kind of undercurrent of, I feel responsible. This person has all these expectations of me. And just think about outside of the coaching industry, a coaching relationship. In all your relationships, how many times have we had someone in our life, a parent or a sibling or a partner, project onto you what your role should be, right? And then you unconsciously fall into that role.
Yeah, it's something like that too. But countertransference technically is like this. The client's personality is pulling something from you, and you're reacting as if it's a normal situation. In other words, that you're buying into that feeling without considering that you're in a coach-client relationship. You're not in an equal relationship with this person, and therefore to react without thinking of what are they pulling from me, and I can't use it right now, or I can't buy into it automatically, because my role as a coach is to take care of my client and to give them what they need in the session. If you buy into it and you react automatically without thinking about it, you're caught up in countertransference. In other words, you're just as guilty as they are of them projecting something onto you. Now you're projecting your own emotions onto them.
So, for example, if your client, again, is instead of praising you, they're criticizing. They're like, I really need some more of this in the sessions, and you're not listening to me, or that critical, type of feedback, or even just general feedback. It could be very neutral, but you're thinking in your filter that this is negative, it's bad. I've never felt that. Have I ever acted like that, Rob? And you take it really personally. That's the countertransference. Yeah. And then you react, which is you got to fix it, or it could be over pleasing, right? That agreeableness, like, oh, I got to, I used to do this. This is a really great example. I used to do a lot of meditations for my love clients, and I'd have a bunch of meditations, and I would record them myself and pick the music. And then I'd get people like, this background music, I can't relax to it. It's too churchy. And I'm like, okay. I would change it and edit it. And one of my clients, a longtime client, goes, remember in the beginning when I used to work with you and you used to do like 50 versions of your visualization to please everybody? And so that's the countertransference. You're like, you feel unconsciously responsible, and it's like an old pattern that you're living out through the people. And that's the thing about individuation, is the more individuated the coach is, they don't fall into these traps with their clients. And whether you're a coach or even running a business or running a team, this is very, very powerful, because you end up, this is why people burn out, because they're so emotionally reactive to what other people's feedback is. And they use their survival kit, reactionary survival kit to respond.
The more conscious you are, then you can use even your own countertransference to help the client. Because think of what your situation is. You're putting yourself in the shoes of the people that are interacting with your client out in the world. And so you're able to give your client feedback as to how he might be perceived by others out in his or her social situation.
So you would say, everyone, you're very critical, and that's why your mother is saying you're like, I've called out clients on that, because they'll be like, my mother's saying I'm this, my mother's saying I'm that, my mother's saying, and I said, well, you just said X, Y, and Z. Don't you see the connection here? It's calling them out in it, but not being like, you're like that too, but more like giving them an example versus a judgment.
That's right. It's again, you're putting the client's needs ahead of your own, and you're using any and all information that arises from the dyad of or the relationship between you as a coach and the client. You're using that information for the benefit of the client.
Now, can I add one more thing that I think is so important, which it's like probably the core of a lot of this, is that when you are a coach, you need to have a coach. You can't do your personal growth through your clients. You have to have your own coach so you can continue to work on your evolution. Because if you don't have a coach, you stop your evolution based on wherever your last training was, maybe, and you're kind of only limited to the type of transformation you can give your clients.
Yeah, absolutely. If you have your own coach, it's a tremendous help, because you're processing your own feelings and emotions and your own psychology as you're going through the growth process of becoming and being a coach.
So it's really important, and it also helps you be successful, because if you don't believe in coaching enough to hire a coach, then how are you going to sell your coaching, right? If you don't even have one. So it's very, very important. Rob and I have been doing this for a long time. We always have a coach, because we know that it's important for us to keep evolving, and also for the benefit of our clients.
That's right. So in agreeableness, one of the big 5, it's a balance between being empathetic with your client, meeting their needs, but also being able to call them out on things and being able to have those difficult conversations with them.
And when you first start individuating and integrating, the shadow that comes up, that difficult conversations, is maybe you're not agreeable, or maybe you're being difficult and you're afraid of being perceived that way. That's what the shadow is. And so initially, when you have those difficult conversations, you may feel a little guilty afterwards. You may feel weird, or like almost like a almost like a sore a little bit that this isn't normally me, but that's what the ego's trying to, it uses that emotion to say, see, be agreeable. It won't show up anymore if you just be agreeable. But facing those emotions, and that's the process, is not just changing behavior. You have to work with the emotion that shows up when you do. That's really where the work comes in. A lot of people think, well, if I just change it, I'll feel more powerful. But sometimes, and many times, you feel kind of weird. It feels awkward. It feels like you did something wrong because it's outside of your normal way of being. And I always say that's a sign of growth. When we feel uncomfortable, when we feel this doesn't feel like our old skin, it's going to feel uncomfortable. But it's so rewarding. If you do it enough times, you start to get used to being uncomfortable instead of comfortable.
So next week, we'll be talking about our favorite neuroticism.
Oh, it's my number 5. Yeah, neuroticism, which is that making sure everything is done right and the emotions, like we're being emotionally sensitive. Yes, it's a good one. So we'll see you next week with the next episode. In the meantime, don't forget to subscribe on your podcast network, whatever you use, Spotify, iTunes. And if you're listening to us and watching us on YouTube, we'd love to have you subscribe to our YouTube channel, CreativeMind, and get every episode. We'll see you next week on Soul Sessions.
See you soon.
Bye-bye.